My name is Sukina. I'm one half of PoeticPilgrimage. We are a spoken word hip hop duo, and I'm from London. So, the question about Muslim feminism, or what are my thoughts on Muslim feminism, I think first of all, I second everything Munira says, basically, 100%. I don't want to backtrack over the things that she said, but I think one of my biggest issues regarding this conversation about feminism or Muslim feminism is that feminism is a 19th century concept. Do you get what I'm saying? That it was developed in the Western world by white women to help them assert themselves against a backdrop of white male patriarchy. As far as I'm concerned, that's not really the foundations of it isn't my conversation. Do you get what I'm saying? That was what they did for themselves at a time, like Munira said, where we were still enslaved and we were still oppressed. And it didn't really have much to do with us. They weren't really interested in the rights of black women, in the rights of, indigenous women. At the time, it was very much about white femininity and white femaleness. So that's the first thing where I don't necessarily identify with that kind of concept. The reason why is because I feel as people of African descent, as people of indigenous descent, we have always had a concept of, balance when it came to it. Originally, I'm saying, like, when it came to the roles of men and women, that I think is a lot more legitimate than a 19th century concept that was also against a backdrop of so much, I'm saying, capitalism and all these different things. It's kind of like feminism was a response to something that, that's not necessarily what I'm identifying with. I feel like if we look at traditional African cultures or traditional Native American cultures, if we look at Aboriginal cultures, you see so much in the roles and the contribution of women and the balance of genders that we didn't need these Western concepts to give us this kind of sense of self, first of all. I think also, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes.
10 minutes.
So that's that. We had our own thing. We had our own ideas. We had our own identities. I think that when you look at, Islam or Muslim and then feminism, when I look at what it means to be a Muslim, I think for a lot of people, the word has different connotations. For some people, to be a Muslim is just a tradition of their parents, for example. It's a cultural concept. It's a construct. For me, what it means to be a Muslim is a very universal, sacred idea that has no time or space, to do with being a soul that lives its life in service and in submission and in service to God. That's how I see it. To me, Muslim doesn't mean Moroccan. To me, it doesn't mean Saudi Arabian. It means a soul that recognizes and witnesses within itself that it has a Lord, and that comes with a particular way in which we live. I don't see that Islam, like, to be a Muslim, that concept came just with Muhammad, peace be upon him. I see that that's a universal concept that's always existed. We just identify it as Islam now. So with that in mind, feminism, which only happened 5 seconds ago, to me, that doesn't really, I'm not saying it's an oxymoron, but that doesn't sit next to this universal concept, because for me, what it means to be a Muslim is it's an eternal spiritual concept, if that makes sense. So I feel like as Muslims in the Western world, we lack self-esteem when it comes to our own traditions. We're very insecure. And so we're kind of like siding ourselves with these different ideologies to kind of give ourselves some kind of identity, or to give ourselves some kind of like significance, And so personally, I just think that we need to kind of look into our own traditions. I've gained more of a sense of self as a Muslim, as a woman in Islam, than I had prior to that. You know what I'm saying? And again, that might seem like a contradiction for a lot of people, and that's not because it's not because of a dialogue that exists in Islam, but it's because of the traditions, it's because of the teachings, it's because of what I recognize that when in the Quran, when Allah talks about the soul, there's no distinction. When it comes on a soul level, there's no distinction between a male and a female soul. I follow a Sufi path within Islam. When you deal with Sufism, it gets to a point where you get beyond the kind of the gender binary, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? It's not about like, I'm a man and you're a woman. Like, in fact, in some circles, if you're on a spiritual journey, especially within Sufism, and you kind of, I don't know, you travel and you've gained a certain level of knowledge and a certain level of enlightenment, so to speak, they don't even refer to you by gender anymore. They would say you're a man of God, which really doesn't really, it's translated to mean man of God, but it's not really man even. It's not really about masculinity. It's to do with a level of uprightness and a level of, I'm saying, to show you that, like, as you continue on the journey, these kind of binaries to do with gender that actually don't really exist anymore, So all of that metaphysical stuff not to say that I don't take away from what's happening in Afghanistan. I don't take away from what's happening in Saudi, what's happening in Sudan, that there are issues of patriarchy in Muslim African countries, right? But then I also feel like, let's also look at these countries before colonialism. You know what I'm saying? Like, what was happening before? Again, so the same period of time of, like, European masculine patriarchal systems in our countries, we also had something before that. And I'm kind of a little bit not that interested in what, what white masculinity did a particular thing to our people. And so now we're using white femininity to redefine ourselves. I'm not really that interested in that.
That's a great statement. I'm going to use that on Facebook, mate.
Well, so that's just kind of how I feel. Do I think it's important for Muslim women to assert themselves and to know their rights and to have a level of equality? Absolutely. But I don't feel they need to go to, some names of, like, I don't know. I don't feel they need to go to, like, a book by the suffragettes to gain that. You know what I'm saying? I don't think they need to go, and and then also that's my full stop on that. My other issue with the feminist movement is the anti-maleness that I'm also not interested in as well, because I feel like that doesn't serve our communities. It doesn't serve humanity. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't serve our men either. These conversations about womanhood and femininity, our brothers should always be present as well, and it's important that we understand ourselves within this concept. Like, me and Manira were talking the other day about the fact that, like, yeah, we're females, but we have masculine elements too. And also brothers are male, but they have feminine elements too. We're not outside of each other. It's not this, like, it's not a war. Every time you see a man, suddenly your back's up and you feel like you're fighting, patriarchy is a system. The same way white supremacy is a system. It's not to do with individual white people. It's not to do with individual men. It's to do with a system that exists. And yeah, we're not pro that system, but at the same time, I don't hate men. You know what I'm saying? I don't feel like this is an attack. We should be fighting each other. It's actually very much about, the men that a lot of women are hating on who gave birth to them, who raised them, Even in one of our rehearsal sessions for the Malcolm X play, when I read my poem for the first time, and a conversation came up about feminism and women and da-da-da-da. Some of the brothers were saying, misogyny only existed when the white men came to our lands. We didn't have it before. Others were saying, and one brother, and I identify with what he was saying. He said, look, I feel that women also have to take a little bit of responsibility, in a sense that I'm a particular way. I don't go in the kitchen. I don't help out. My sisters do everything. My mum raised me like that. Do you get what I'm saying? My mum is the one who gave me that position to be like, my son, sit down and relax. So we as women also have to take responsibility for the point where we let our power go. There must have been a point, because it wasn't always like that. So I think that, instead of us trying to fight men, we also need to look at ourselves and be like, when did we allow ourselves to lose our God-given power?